Hi all, Karen here, today with another card for Christmas in July. Now this one is a 5x7 and it's three-dimensional. The snowflake hangs in the middle. It does fold flat to go in an envelope. But then when it opens up, this springs forward, that's on acetate, and this spins around. It's kind of a fun card, and I did put more sentiments on the other side. And you can either put them all on the front or put one on each side. There's a lot of personal preference in this card. So let me get the camera turned around because there's some things we're going to need to discuss, like this embossing powder. I don't know if you can see it there. It's rather sparkly. It has glitter. So we will discuss how to deal with the glitter. Let me get it turned around and we'll get started. All right, so let's take another look at the card. So we're going to have 3 snowflakes, which are embossed with the glitter embossing powder, but we'll talk about that. There's some acetate across the front. There's a sentiment on the front. And I did put one here and one here. And this is kind of fun because when you fold your card, when you put it in the envelope, just wind this up. And then you're going to lay it flat in your envelope. And then when the person opens it, it twirls, which is kind of fun. And then when it opens, this all is straight here in the front, and that's what they see. So it's a fun little card. It's a little different. So what you're going to need here, let me get my list. So we're going to need 3 pieces of white that are 5x7. We're going to need 3 that are 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, which are going to get glued on here. All right, then we're going to need a piece that is 1/2 by 6 inches long. That's acetate. And I have attached blue painter tape to it so I don't lose it. You're going to need some white paper to stamp on. You're going to need some nesting dies, which I'm going to be using my stitched ones here. And we'll talk about that in a second. And the ones I'm going to be using are the 3 5/8 and the 4 inches, which is the second and third one in. The stamp set I'm using is from Gina K. It's called Blizzard. She came out with this last year, but it's still available on her website. And there is stamps and dies. We're going to be using the Pink and Main wintergreen embossing powder, which has the glitter in it. For the string hanging down here, I like to use my jewelry thread that I have. And this is what it is. I'm going to leave it here for a second so you can all look at it, see what it is, write it down, take a picture of it. It's premium spiller spool, and you'll find this in the jewelry section of Michael's or Joann's or whatever. And yeah, it's pretty invisible. So that's nice. And then whatever sentiments you have from your stash. So that's what we'll need. So I'm going to get started by gluing these together so they have time to dry. And I'm trying out a new silicone glue here. We'll see how it goes. So far I like it. I got it on Amazon, and I'll let you know. So far, no clogging. It dries pretty quickly, but it does give you a little bit of wiggle time, which is what I was looking for, because the tacky glue grabs so fast. I was looking for something that I could buy easily here in the United States, because I do like Carlisle glue, but it's kind of hard to find sometimes. So I'm trying this. So we're going to glue these 3 down. And once again, those are the 5x7 white pieces of paper. And the print paper is 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. So we're just going to glue all these down. Yeah, this card goes together pretty quickly. The only tricky part is getting it all lined up, but I will show you how to do that without a lot of fuss. All right. All right, we'll let those dry. So the next thing I want to do is to get the rings cut. So I've cut 2 to save a little bit of time, but I wanted to show you how I did it. So here are my 2 nesting dies that I have. This is my set. So I took the second and the third one in, and I just did that by holding it up to the stamp I was going to use and just making sure that the inner one was big enough to allow it to swing in a circle. And then I went up one, taped them together, and now I'm going to cut this out, which will give me my little frames. So I'm going to tape this down. And I'm going to run this through my MIDI. All right, add that to my pile of circles I have over there. And then we have our ring. So you want to get all those cut out first, so you can remember, so that way you know how big your frame is going to be and how big your hole is going to be. So now I'm done with the bigger one. Take all this tape off. Putting the bigger one away. All right, so now, let's see if these are dry. I'm going to give those another minute or two. So let's go on to the stamp. All right, so here's my stamping paper. I have my stamps and my stamping platform. So let's put this on here. All right, so we're going to be using the big one and this little one here. So I'm going to stamp 2 at a time. So we're going to be stamping this with Gina K pigment ink. Now you can use distressed oxide for embossing. I wouldn't recommend it with the glitter because the glitter is heavier and you need something that's really going to hold on to it. I would even say if you normally stamp twice, stamp 3 times. You want to make sure your paper really has a good amount of ink on it when you're using the glitter embossing powder. And yes, that is the voice of experience. First time I did it, I made a couple big mistakes. I tried using the distressed oxide. I did not have my heat gun on low. And yeah, it went everywhere. So that was, yeah. So let's not do that again. All right, so we're going to stamp once. And I like to use the ivory. This is a personal preference. That way I can see where I've stamped. I have a hard time seeing it if I use the clear. A lot of times I even use a color. There we go. Now I'm going to move this snowflake down there. Take this one off. And stamp the other one. First, we're going to make sure our heat gun is nice and hot. We're using pigment ink to make sure it's all nice and sticky. Yeah, see how pretty that is? It is really pretty, but we have to be very careful with it. Oh, see, I made a mess. All right, put that there. All right, I heat up my heat gun. All right, so the heat gun is hot. So also to minimize it blowing around, I am going to emboss this from the back. All right, that's all good. Okay. All right, now I want to bring in the dies, but I want to show you something. Because something like this, where you have to stamp it ahead of time and you've already embossed it and put that much effort into it, I want to show you a little trick you can do to make sure you get a good lineup when you put your die on. So I cut out the die. This is the die for this big snowflake. So I cut it out earlier, and I am going to line this up. And now you can see where the hole is. You can see exactly where the white space is going to be. So I am going to put it where it's all nice and even, and I'm happy with it. Now I'm going to tape this down. And now the die will slide right into place. It will slide right into that hole. And I will tape this down. There we go. So we'll do the same thing with the small one. All right, now we will run this through the machine. All right, so let's look. Pull this off. We can use it again for the other one. And we also need another big one. There you go, all nice and centered. There's two. Now we will line this one up. We'll do the same thing. All right, and there we go. There's two. Now all we have left is one more of the big ones. All right, so now we will do the same thing. There you go, nice and straight. So now I will put this away with the dies, so I will have it for next time. Okay, so while I was waiting for the glue to dry, I cleaned up all the glitter. And all I used was a lint roller. That is your friend. That will pick up all that glitter, and we are now good to go. There we go. Keep one of those handy. All right, I think these are now dry. So let me grab my scoreboard. And these are 7 across, so we're going to score them at 3.5. That's just going to give us the center line. All right, so let's bring in our papers, and we're going to fold these along the creases, the score lines we just made. Because these are going to get glued back to back like this. So what we have to do is make sure we line up these holes. That's the most important part here. So what we're going to do, we're going to take one of these. We're going to find the middle. Now it doesn't matter top to bottom. It's side to side that we have to be concerned about. Let me close that. So what we need to do, let me get some tape ready. All right, so let's put the 0 on the seam, on the fold. So then it's 3.5 to each side of the card. So we need to make sure this is in the middle. All right, that looks good. So I'm going to hold that there. I am going to tape this down. Now let me run this through the machine. All right, so now we have one cut. So now we're going to check it before we get carried away and do any more. So we're going to fold this in half, and we're going to make sure this lines up. And it does. So we're good. So that should be a good lining up. So that should be good. Yeah, so always check it when you do your first one, just to make sure you placed it right. Because you don't want to do all three and then realize it's crooked. All right, so now to do the next one, pull this tape off. I grab the next one. I am going to tape these together. And I'm going to slide this into the hole. So it slides in place. I'll just tape that back together again. All right. The fine line between putting too much tape on there and not having it stick together. All right, so slide that into the hole. Feels like it's in there. Put tape and run it through the machine. All right, so let's poke this through. And I am using the electronic machine instead of my MIDI over here because it is so many layers. I didn't think the MIDI was going to like that. All right, now let's check this. So when we glue these on, we will glue them this way. Let's make sure we're all nice and straight. Well, you're good. You know, the frame will cover it some, so if it's not exactly the same, you know, you can use your frame to hide it a little bit. But yeah, I think we are in good shape. That's off just a smidge. But the frame, when you put the frame on, it will cover that. So it will be fine. All right, so let's do the third one. All right, so now we have all three. So let's get them glued together. Now, before we get carried away and we glue this together, let's put our string in. Because the worst thing that can happen is you start gluing and then realize you've glued everything down and now you can't see anything. All right, so let me grab a string that you can actually see to show you what I'm about to do. All right, it'll be easier to see with this. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to lay this across here. Then I'm going to pull it back on itself at an angle and tape it down. So I'll have a piece of tape here and a piece of tape down here. And then I will pull it taut. And I will tape it here, and then I will pull it down this way and tape it down this way. But when I have that invisible string, you're not going to see any of that. So it's going to be hard to see. All right, so let me cut a piece. So now this will just look like my hands are floating around in the air. All right, so it's tape. I'll turn this sideways just so it's easier. Grab my invisible string. We will put a piece of tape here. I'm going to trim this tape. So I put that on really crooked. There we go. Grab another piece of tape. Pull this down on itself. And tape down here. Then I can pull it taut. Pull it down on itself and put another piece of tape. And I'm just going to put a piece of tape in here for good measure. Snip that off. Doesn't hang down. All right. Snip my invisible ends. All right, so that is good to go now. So now we will apply glue. Let's make sure we have the right side here. Yep. Get everything else out of my way. And we're only going to apply glue to this side, around the edge, match up the ends. Okay, now we'll flip this over, give it a good crease. So now we'll put glue on both sides. Make sure this didn't slide. Okay. Now this whole piece gets glue around the circle, around the edge, a little in the middle. And this goes here. You can see why you would get carried away gluing it all together and then realize you didn't put your string in. So always put the string in first. And then you just want to squeeze your points here a little bit. Your little corner here. You want to make sure that's really secure. All right, so see there's a little bit here that's not exactly perfect. Let me trim this first. So I'm just going to come in with some scissors. we go. All right, so now let's put them on. A little more glue. Go. Looks like I missed a piece of glue over here. Let me put a little extra glue down here and down here. Go. Sometimes when you cut the holes out of it, you see where you missed glue. Let's see, is there a difference between the front and the back? Okay. Now let's look at it and see if we like one side better than the other for the front. Use this one here. All right, so now we need to glue. Let's see if we want it this way. We need to glue our snowflake. So I want to do it point to point. So I'm going to lay it down like this. Now I'm going to stick a piece of tape over it to hold it. Put it in the middle, top to bottom, side to side. There you go. Now glue. The tape is really to kind of hold it while we're doing all this. Make sure we get the tips of the snowflake with some glue. Now we will line this one up. There you go. There is that. So now all we have left is our sentiments. Bring all this in with our little snowflakes. And the snowflakes, those are going to go up on foam. Okay. Now I can take the tape off of here. This was just so I would not lose it. You grab the red liner tape. I am going to put a piece on this end. And I did put a tiny little score line on here. So I'm going to put it on the back side of the score line. And a little piece on this side. And line this up where it's in the middle. Press down. So now when you open it, it pops out. So now the big sentiment that says, "May your Christmas be merry and bright," I'm going to put in the front here. So to do that, I'm going to put the tape across the back here. I'm going to push it down with my bone folder to get it to stick really good. That doesn't want to stick on that side. We'll lay this down, make sure we're not upside down. The center, that looks good. All right, so now when we open it, that pops out. I think that needs a little bit more of a crease there. There we go. Now we're popping out. So on the side here, I put a 1/4 of an inch fold here on the edge. I scored it at a 1/4 of an inch, and that's just so when I open it, it pops out more. Because it will pop out a little bit, but I really wanted it to pop out. So now, to cover this, I'm going to put these little snowflakes on here on foam. This is just 1/16 thick foam. So that will just go on here. Just make sure you're not hanging off the edge. And there. There we go. So now I have 2 more sentiments. I have walking in a winter wonderland and let it snow. So you can do a couple different things here. You can just leave the 1 on here. You could put all 3 in the front. I'm going to put 1 on each side. Let's see, so from here, if we're going to flip it this way, I'm going to put this one over here. And I will put this one over here. We'll see it from there. So I think I'm going to put the other one on this side. Let's see, because if you're looking at it from the front, if it's folded that way, you'll see it that way. Yeah, I'm going to put it this side. All right, so there it is. And it still folds flat to go in the envelope. And when you put it in an envelope, just wind this up. A lot easier to do it if I wasn't holding it so you could see. So we'll wind that up, put it in the envelope, so then when the person opens it, it spins. All right, let me get the camera turned around. All right, so here's our card. Remember, it still folds flat to go in the envelope. When you open it up, this hangs in the middle. Here's the original one that I made. So we had a few difficulties, but I showed you how to overcome if something's not completely lined up, and it will still work. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, give me a like. And if you want to see the rest of the videos, I know we're getting toward the end of the month, but there's still a couple more. Subscribe and you'll get a notification for the rest of the Christmas in July videos. And until next time, stay crafty.